Happy anniversary. He wasn't going to make the same mistake as last year. Even though it wasn't really his fault, he did try to be a dutiful husband and remember their anniversary. Each year, in the lazy days between Christmas and New Year's, he would diligently record all his important dates in the day planner someone inevitably gave him as a present. Damn that new BlackBerry, that had made him lazy and lulled him into a false sense of security. Somehow the automatic calendar reminder had failed to happen, and the day came and went. He'd been totally oblivious to the fact that he'd even missed it. She had never even mentioned it. In fact, and he wondered if she'd also forgotten their anniversary after all those years. Well, he wouldn't forget it this year, as he always did when his BlackBerry worked properly. He selected a pre-made bouquet of flowers, a dozen red roses with a backing of baby's breath. Then he quickly scanned the nearby rack of cards looking for something romantic, instead of a generic happy anniversary card with some silly joke or lame saying. And, to his surprise, there it was, a simple and elegant vellum card displaying soft watercolour flowers with a vision. Wow, he thought, that sure looks a lot like my wife. He marvelled at the similarity as he mused, she'd get a kick out of this one. Knowing that the picture was perfect, he almost forgot to peek at the inscription inside the card. To the most beautiful flower I have ever laid eyes upon. He paid for the card and zipped home into his Porsche, happy that he'd beat her home from work. He placed the bouquet on the countertop, propped the card. He hadn't expected his card to have so much impact. His hands slid round her waist to support her as she swayed and burst into tears. She must really appreciate his gesture. Man, he'd really scored. Time had stopped for her and rewound to last spring. She could see him so clearly in her mind, his paintbrush in hand, a little easel and a bouquet of flowers on the table in front of him. She'd been sitting on a low stool in front of him, wearing only his robe suffused with the afterglow of their love-making. She'd known from her first day at the firm that he was attracted to her, but he'd been a total gentleman and never once made any inappropriate or lewd comment. After last year's anniversary debacle, she decided to foster his interest in her, and it had not been long before the two of them were having the most amazing, steamy affair that one could possibly imagine. Her husband never had the slightest clue, being more interested in the New York Yankees and the price of pork futures than in her. Her mind was frozen in time, stuck on the day that he offered to paint her. It was right after the two of them had made love. Afterwards she cried on his shoulder, partly out of guilt for cheating and partly out of joy from the flood of sexual emotion that she hadn't felt in years of marriage. He'd been an attentive and passionate lover, putting her needs before his own. He told her incessantly how beautiful and incredibly desirable she was, but she needed to bite her tongue when he'd commented on how lucky her husband must be to have her. After they'd showered together to wash away the sweat of their love-making, he'd offered to paint her to show her how beautiful he saw her in his mind. She'd agreed, and for the first time in years she felt alive again as a woman. She felt beautiful, sexy, and after longer than she could remember, she felt like she was truly loved. He kissed her goodbye at the end of that dreamlike day, telling her they would get together as soon as he returned from Los Angeles, where he had been sent to tidy up some loose ends on a greetings card contract negotiation. He called her every day at work while he was away, and together they counted down the days until his return. Finally, on the day he was flying home, he texted her as he got on the plane. "To the most beautiful rose I've ever seen. I look forward to seeing you soon. Kiss, hug." She saw the news report that afternoon. A plane had crashed shortly after taking off from LAX, killing all passengers on board. She knew in the pit of her stomach that he was one of them. Somehow she managed to bury away the grief. She'd boxed it up, tied it shut with psychological string, and stashed it in some deep dark recess of her mind. The husband had no idea she was grieving the loss of her secret lover. She clutched the card to her chest, her grief now released, the memory of her affair first and foremost in her mind. She'd barely noticed her husband wrap her coat round her and lead her out to the car. She'd been oblivious of the drive to his favourite restaurant, her tears flowing freely for her lost love as they drove in silence. He dropped her off at the front door and went to park out back. You could never trust valets in this town, and he preferred to park the car himself. When he got into the restaurant, he couldn't find his wife anywhere. She was probably in the restroom, fixing her makeup, he guessed. The card was crumpled and wet from her tears, clutched in her hand as she sat in the back of the taxi. She knew she looked a frightful mess, but it didn't matter. There would be plenty of time to clean herself up when she got there. For now she was occupied with thoughts of what she'd say when she got to the crash site. How would she say goodbye to her lover and start the new fresh chapter of her life that she knew he'd want her to begin?